Hello and welcome to Creators and Coffee. I am your host, Erica, the founder and CEO of Autofluencer. And joining me today, back for a second time, is Taylor Haney of Clutch Chick Media, known for her amazing media captures, both photography and video that she does at drift racing. And welcome back, Taylor.
I'm glad to be here again.
So great to have you on. Last time we talked a lot about your tips for brands and the drivers who are your clients on, just tips for them to work together better, tips on how to work with a media professional. And now I'm actually going to turn it around, turn the lens around, if you will. And yeah, I know I had to have a dumb pun. But where you're talking about, okay, what if I'm someone who wants to get into the professional media side, right? I want to go to drift racing or to no prep drag or to street race, whatever it is, and become a professional photographer or videographer, or media person. How do I do that? One of the things that I really attracted me to you and what you were posting on social is it wasn't just the imagery. You actually spend a lot of time doing education um, on this side. So I thought, how great to give a platform and give you the chance to speak about that more. First off, I think for anybody listening, how did you get to where you are, right? How did you get started?
Earlier we were talking and I told you like I got started with all this in 2015 and you said like 9 years and I'm like, yeah, I guess it has been that long. Really,
Yeah.
the time has gone by. But so I went to school in this little small college called Lynchburg College in Virginia. I went there to study graphic design and with a minor in studio photography. That started my photography journey. I've always been an artsy person. It just felt natural. And the further I got into doing photography, the more I realized that I wanted to mesh my passion for cars and
Mm.
photography. I've been into cars since I was like 11, 12, little.
Yeah.
My dad and I would go to drag races, and I probably saw the Fast and the Furious movie 4 times in the theater. Like I've always been really, really into cars. It made sense, it never left me. Um,
Yeah.
so even in college. So during my study in graphic design, I met this girl. Her name's Karen Sullivan, and she was starting a women's automotive magazine at the time and called Girls in Garages. And it's no longer in print. We only did like maybe 4 prints of it and then it went digital. That's kind of how things are. It's like the print magazine kind of
Yeah.
went out of style, unfortunately. I remember the days of having stacks of car magazines, but those are
Yeah.
gone. So anyway, she wanted to do this magazine highlighting women in the industry, from builders to female drivers to
Uh-huh.
mechanics and things like that. So I helped her with that, designing the magazine, some writing and some photography. Maybe a year went by and I went to an event in Englishtown, New Jersey, which I was just there this last weekend. So it's fun to talk about it again.
Yeah. Full
But
circle, right?
yeah, it's wild. And I was there to cover this girl who had a pink 240, and she was a drift chick, and she was really inspiring. Her name was Rachel Turtz. Did a little photo shoot in Delaware, and she's like, "You've got to come back up in 2 weeks." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "We've got East Coast Bash, the grassroots drift event at Englishtown Raceway. You got to come back up. It's our biggest event." And I said, "All right. I guess I'll come and
I'm
see
in.
what these crazy drifters are up to." So I applied for a media pass, said I was with the magazine. So that kind of got me in, being a part of a publication. I fell in love with it. I want to do this every weekend, you
Yeah.
know.
You got the bug.
I did. And I got to go on a ride along with a drifter as well. So that just made it worse, of course. But
Yeah.
that probably that was kind of like the taking off point into covering like event coverage specifically in photography and going to these racing events. From there, I had a mentor that had me come down for top fuel drag race bikes, road racing.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of everything. I do some HPDE, some still, but not so much as much
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, drifting's like kind of my bread and butter. That's how I got started, was that event and just being involved in the magazine, going to SEMA and talking to people and going to these events and just networking, you know?
Great.
Um,
Yeah. When you started, and I had asked you about this before, and I think this is kind of for budding photographers that are out there, or media people, you weren't always Clutch Chick Media. That has kind of evolved. So talk a little bit about your decision to change from your name to kind of a brand.
I started off like how everybody does, really. You just go to events and you shoot and you share the pictures with people and they kind of know you by your name. And I had a little Facebook page was T Haney Photography. It wasn't anything special. My watermark on my images was very simple. It was just my name. And it was probably like that for, I don't know, 5 years. And I decided in 2020 that I wanted to change my name to something a little bit more I could do more with,
Yeah.
branding wise, like a cool logo or something. I thought of drifting, and clutch kicking is a term that you use a lot in drifting. So it kind of went like clutch kick to clutch chick. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where the name came from. This year, I decided to make an LLC out of it. That was a big step for me, mostly for bookkeeping purposes. It's a lot easier to keep expenses and write things off when they're separate from your other personal expenses. So that
Yeah.
was my main driver for that.
Yeah.
But just, yeah, that the whole like tacking on the LLC was like,
It's a
wow,
big deal.
I've really been doing this a
I
while,
know.
haven't I?
Race photography is certainly a lot different than someone going to car shows and taking pictures of cars that are just sitting there and not moving. So, as someone that's wanting to get into this and thinking of it, and like you said, some of them are probably already going, but explain a little bit about the nature of race photography and being out there and being there and being paid to be there. It's a little bit different than you're doing it of your own free will and hoping someone will ask you to, come along
Yeah.
with them next time, right? What changes when you start, you know, what should someone expect?
At first, it's going to be slow. A lot of photographers don't really charge from what I've seen. You're building your portfolio essentially and building relationships with people and drivers that show the events, and they see your pictures and they like it, and they kind of know who you are, but you're not charging yet. That's how a lot of people do. And I think that part is essential to building your portfolio and getting people to know you, building those relationships, networking, kind of like I was saying before, is really
Hmm.
important. But I wouldn't stay there super long, because as you're learning this skill, your value goes up, right? So you want to be
Right.
paid for your time. Being paid for your time may look different for other people. It could be, more of like a tick for tack bartering, or it could be a, monetary value, and that monetary value looks different for everybody. I even charge different based on what type of event I'm going to. Like a small local event might be a little less. They don't have a lot of money, and I don't. My expenses are very little because I'm local. But when we're
Yeah.
talking about taking flights and hotels, rental cars, then you're like, okay, I have to, I'm not going to go in the negative for this. It's a weird thing that happens, and I don't know exactly when it shifted for me, other than the fact that I was like, this is getting kind of expensive. Maybe I should charge for this. Trying to decide what that looks like, and then having the conversation, because a lot of photographers, I feel like, are afraid to have that conversation
Hmm.
because they're having so much fun. What they don't realize is by them not valuing themselves, they're hurting the other photographers in the field. I
And it's
actually
not
talked to,
sustainable.
no,
Like at some
yeah,
point, they're going to like just disappear because they can't afford to keep doing it if they don't ever find a way to get paid for
right.
it.
There's people that they want to turn this into a career. They want to, it's like, everybody wants to turn their passion into a career, right? Then you have people that come to these events, and I was actually talking to one of my friends who does IMSA not that long ago, and he's like, I hate when photographers just do it for fun because it makes it really hard on me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean, by that? And he said, well, why would they hire me for X amount of dollars when they could hire this kid for free because he really, really loves it,
Right.
So it's like, you have to really kind of weigh it for yourself and not be afraid to put a dollar amount to the work that you're putting in, especially under the conditions of the racetrack. It's hot,
Yeah.
you're standing for long hours, in the elements, the rain, the sun, and you're, sometimes having to turn around this media right away. And so you're kind of running from one side of the track to the other, and all the while trying to remember to eat and stay hydrated. So there's a lot more than just taking pictures involved. And I think photographers really need to learn. That's like an essential step to being a professional photographer, I think, is knowing your value and not
And
being
yeah.
scared to charge, you know?
Absolutely. And I would say the drivers have that same challenge as well, right? They get frustrated when there's new drivers that are just doing everything for free. And them as a driver, they're like, well, I'm up here trying to get a paid sponsorship. Some of the Pro Spec drivers that have now been in Pro Spec for a few years or many years, it is difficult to move, in any series from the kind of the lower rank up to the pro rank when you can't afford all of the equipment necessarily that can get you there or that can push you into that next level, right? I mean, there is
Mhm.
a reality where your driving prowess can only get you so far. The machine you're in also makes a big difference. And sometimes it's those bigger partnerships and paid sponsorships. So I think there is empathy for someone afraid to ask to get paid from a media side point. Just remember the driver's in that same spot. So they're going to respect you because they've had to do it with their brand partnerships, which they've done for product only for the last year. And now they're like, hey, man, like I've been getting this amount of reach. I've been getting this, and they can see their stats and data in a tool like Autofluencer. What? And
Eh.
so shameless plug. That's why you have your own podcast. And so, but and they can prove that worth and ask for that. So, inversely, I think on a professional media side, in the same vein, you could use a tool like Autofluencer when you're partnering with driver to see performance before and after stepping the media up. Like it will change. You will see that performance go up when you have a higher level. I also think one thing, and I'd be curious if you experienced this, if you were working for free for a driver, and I heard this from a driver who recently just switched a relationship from kind of free, like, hey, I'll pay for your travel to, okay, look, now I'm going to pay you because she felt bad asking that media person, like, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do that? Because they were there kind of for free. So she
Yeah.
didn't want to ask them to do same day turn, or she didn't want to ask them, like, oh, can you get this? She also knew it was free. She didn't want to take advantage of that. And she also knew because it was free and she wasn't paying the person, they were taking other gigs from other drivers. They weren't just hers. So in certain times where she had a free moment and wanted to record something, maybe that person wasn't there because they were overrunning over it, and so it's like, oh shoot, I want to
Yes.
pay this person so I can get these set times. Like that's also like, have you experienced that when you kind of switch from free to paid, that now the relationship with that driver changed?
Oh, absolutely, because it kind of goes back to like we were talking about ROI in the last episode. They're looking in their balance sheets and they're accounting for how much can I pay my media and how much am I
Yeah.
getting out of my sponsor and how can I get more out of my sponsor so I can make sure my media gets paid. So they're like trying to figure things out
Hmm.
in a way that they're not having to shell out their own money, personal money. So a lot of these guys are, they have other things, other jobs they do,
Yeah, for
beyond,
sure.
besides racing. They have
Pretty
full-time
much
jobs.
every single driver I've met, except for the top
Yeah.
one, they all have at least one, if not multiple day jobs.
It costs money just to have us there. Like
Yeah.
my media pass, just for me to have a media pass for the event costs, a couple $100. And that's
Right.
before he's paid me and before he's bought food,
Yeah. Yeah.
Airbnb or hotel for all the whole
Yep.
team to stay.
Yep.
So it adds up. It's more than just the fuel and the tires
Yep.
and everything. You have to
Yeah.
have your team in there. Going back to what you were saying, like having someone who's working for free, they have to get their money somewhere. So of course they're going to tap into other clients that may be willing to pay to make
Hmm.
the dream happen. I actually set myself a expectation this year that I wasn't going to do Formula Drift if I didn't have 3 drivers. And I have my own rate that I charge. So I understood that it's like if I'm going to charge this rate that is fair for these drivers, then this is how many drivers I have to have as my clients to make it worth it,
Yeah.
between the flights and everything else that goes with it. The
And you've
flight
got
is
a
the
day
main
job,
thing.
so you also have to miss work
Yes.
to do this, right?
Yeah,
Because you have to
I
travel.
have to have
Yeah.
PTO. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thankfully my job is very, they're in the auto industry, so they understand. They
Yeah.
think it's cool. It's
That's
like,
cool.
oh, Taylor's going to Formula Drift again, you know? So it's
Yeah.
thankfully they're cool with it. Otherwise, I would be a lot of questions of like, why are you gone for 4 days again? You know, they get it. So that helps.
If you had to give like a one-liner of advice for someone who's like, man, I want to do this, like what would be your one-liner of advice?
Having a strong portfolio is
Hmm.
key, and to just get out there and shoot. Start volunteering at local events, work with amateur drivers, drivers that are like have aspirations to go pro, and building those relationships. That's something that has helped me. Like Human Rahimi that I work with now, I knew him when he was doing more pro am stuff. Like he hadn't
Yeah.
even gotten, you know, he was doing little things, and I did like an article on him for Moto IQ years and years and years ago.
Yeah,
So like
that's awesome.
we've been friends for this whole
Yeah.
time. When I got interested in wanting to come with them for Formula Drift, he's like, "Yeah, you want to come?" You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
That's great.
sure, sure, why not? So having those early on relationships is really crucial, you know,
Yeah.
but it's not something that's going to happen overnight either.
Was just about to say that's such a great reminder. Like even you, like people say, "Whoa, she's there. Oh, she's doing all this stuff," because you post a lot of your personal, which I think is really cool. I love seeing your kind of behind the scenes views of when you're traveling and you're at the events. And so I think people might see it and think this is awesome, and maybe think out of nowhere she just did this, right? Or they might look back Clutch Chick Media. It's only been around, like, oh well,
Hmm.
that was quick. That could be me, and that it has been a long road, and it is a passion project. It
Yes.
is something. One last thing, because we didn't talk about it on the other episode, which was a big fail on my part. Since this is called Creators and Coffee, one of the questions I do ask people. I used to say, "What's your favorite type of coffee?" Only to learn in our space, a lot of people don't actually drink coffee. They drink.
Hmm.
So I usually say, "What is your favorite caffeinated beverage?"
For me, it's coffee. I usually have one cup, but it has to have creamer in it, like some sort of flavored, like I flavor it up. Like I'm
Yeah,
definitely not a, you know, sugar's not enough for me.
yeah.
So it's more of a sugar coffee than anything. But yeah, I have to have my coffee in the morning, or I'm not a good functioning member of society.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm impressed you're good with one cup. I'm a tea person, but I can't stick to one. I'll have like a few like giant sippy cups of iced tea. So I should probably just have a coffee and call it a day. Well, Taylor, this was awesome. You such great advice. Again, follow her at Clutch Chick Media. The amount that you give back in education to the industry, I think is huge. And I really appreciate this. I love your work. And again, thanks so much. And you can find her on Autofluencer, Clutch Chick Media, if you want to partner with her and have her as a photographer or videographer for you. So thank you so much, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you for having me.